I never told my son how much money I make, not because I was ashamed, not because I was hiding anything illegal, and definitely not because I didn't earn every dollar. I kept it quiet because I didn't want money raising my child. I wanted life to do that job, so for 35 years I let my son believe I was just average, a regular mom, a woman with an office job, someone who lived simply, dressed plainly, and never talked about success. And honestly, I was okay with that. My name is Alara. I'm 62 years old now, and until one Saturday night not long ago, my son Marcus thought I lived paycheck to paycheck. To him, I was the woman who left early every morning before the sun fully came up, the one who came home tired in the evenings, kicked off her shoes, and cooked whatever was left in the fridge. I was the mom who reused grocery bags, kept the same furniture for years, and wore clothes until they were practically begging for retirement. Nothing flashy, nothing impressive, nothing worth bragging about. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Marcus grew up respectful. He worked hard. He never expected handouts. That mattered more to me than any job title or paycheck ever could, because here's the truth I never said out loud. For almost 2 decades, I've made a little over $40,000 a month. Senior executive, multinational company, budgets bigger than some towns, decisions that affected thousands of people, but I never brought that world home. Money stayed quiet in my life, so quiet that even my own son never heard it breathe. And everything would have stayed that way if it weren't for one phone call. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Marcus called me. I remember it clearly because something felt off the second I heard his voice. You know that tone people get when they're asking for something, but don't want to admit they're asking? That was his tone. "Hey, Mom," he said. "You got a minute for you?" "Always," I replied. There was a pause, not the normal kind, the kind where someone is choosing words carefully. "So, Simone's parents are coming into town this weekend." I already didn't like where this was headed. "They're flying in from overseas," he continued. "They really want to do dinner, like a nice dinner." Another pause, "And they want to meet you." I smiled softly, even though he couldn't see me. Meeting the mother is always a thing. I understood that, but then he added something that made my stomach tight. "They're very successful people, Mom." That sentence sat between us. I didn't answer right away. Marcus rushed on. "I just wanted to give you a heads up so you don't feel uncomfortable or anything." Uncomfortable, not proud, not excited, uncomfortable. "Marcus," I said calmly, "what exactly did you tell them about me?" Silence. Long enough to answer without words, then he cleared his throat. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple." Simple. That word landed heavier than it should have. I closed my eyes for a moment, not because I was hurt, but because I understood. My son wasn't ashamed of me. He was afraid of them, afraid they'd judge, afraid they'd compare, afraid they'd look down on the woman who raised him, and that told me everything I needed to know. "I'll be there," I said. His relief was obvious. "Thank you, Mom, just be yourself." After we hung up, I stood in the middle of my living room. Old couch, scratched coffee table, lamp I'd owned for years. Nothing screamed wealth, nothing screamed struggle either. Just calm, and that's when the idea hit me. If these people were already judging me, if they already assumed I was less than, then why not let them? I decided right then that I wasn't going to correct anyone. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to flex. I was going to show up exactly how they expected. Broke, naive, invisible, because here's something life teaches you if you pay attention. The way people treat you when they think you have nothing, that's who they really are. Not when they're being polite, not when they're trying to impress, but when they believe you don't matter, and I wanted to see it for myself. I wanted to know who my son's in-laws truly were, so Saturday came and I moved slow on purpose. Made coffee, watered the plant by the window, folded laundry that didn't even need folding. I wasn't nervous, I was focused. When you've spent decades in rooms full of powerful people, you learn something important. The loudest ones are usually the weakest. Around 4 in the afternoon, I stood in front of my closet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for my usual clean, simple outfit. I went straight to the back, pulled out a gray dress I hadn't worn in years, wrinkled, shapeless, forgettable. The kind of dress people don't remember 5 minutes after seeing you. I tied my hair back messily, skipped makeup entirely. No jewelry, no watch, no rings. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, small, unremarkable. Perfect. I grabbed my old canvas tote, called a rideshare, and headed out. As the car drove through the city, the neighborhoods changed. Nicer streets, cleaner sidewalks, people dressed like they were headed somewhere important. I checked the address again. Yep, that kind of place. The kind where prices aren't printed on the menu, where confidence is assumed. The car stopped. I paid, stepped out, and took a deep breath. "All right, Alara," I whispered. "Let's see who they really are," and I walked inside. The ride to the restaurant felt longer than it actually was. Not because of traffic, not because I was nervous, but because my mind was quiet in a way it usually isn't. The driver didn't talk much, which I appreciated. Just soft music on the radio and the low hum of the engine. I watched the city pass by through the window, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. The closer we got, the nicer everything looked. The sidewalks were cleaner. The buildings were taller, the storefronts glowed like they were competing for attention. People outside the car looked polished, pressed clothes, confident walks, the kind of folks who knew exactly where they were headed. I glanced down at my reflection in the window. Gray dress, old tote bag, hair pulled back without much thought. I looked like I didn't belong anywhere near this part of town, and that was exactly the point. I checked the address on my phone one more time, even though I already knew it was right. This wasn't just a restaurant, this was a message. The kind of place people pick when they want to make a statement without saying a word. The car slowed, then stopped. Warm golden lights spilled out onto the sidewalk. A doorman stood at the entrance wearing white gloves, holding the door open like this was some kind of private club. I paid the driver, thanked him, and stepped out. For a second, I just stood there, not frozen, not intimidated, just present. I wanted to take it all in, because something deep in my chest told me this night wasn't going to be forgettable. I smoothed the wrinkles in my dress even though it didn't help much, adjusted the strap of my old canvas tote on my shoulder, then I walked inside. The first thing I noticed wasn't the Daker, it was the smell, not food, money. If you've ever been in places like that, you know exactly what I mean. A polished, expensive scent, like success bottled up and sprayed into the air. Soft music played in the background. The kind that lets people talk quietly while still feeling important. Everyone looked comfortable there, everyone except me, and that was fine. I scanned the room slowly and spotted Marcus almost right away. He was standing near a long table by the window, shoulders tight, hands clasped together like he was bracing himself for impact. He kept glancing toward the entrance, waiting. When his eyes met mine, his face changed, not relief. Concerned, that hurt more than I expected. I walked toward him at an unhurried pace. "Mom," he said quietly, leaning in, "you made it." "Of course I did," I replied softly. "I said I would." He gave me a quick hug, too quick. Like he didn't want anyone to notice. Simone stood beside him. She looked beautiful as always, cream-colored dress, perfectly styled hair, subtle makeup that probably cost more than my groceries for the week. When her eyes flicked to my outfit, I saw something shift, not disgust, embarrassment. She kissed my cheek lightly. "Hi," she said. Her voice was warm, but her eyes darted away almost immediately. That's when I knew. She knew exactly how her parents were, and then I saw them, already seated, already settled in, already acting like they owned the space around them. Simone's mother, Veronica, sat upright with flawless posture, her back straight like she'd practiced it her whole life. Her dress shimmered under the lights, catching attention without trying too hard. Jewelry sparkled at her neck, wrists, and fingers. Everything about her screamed control. Her husband, Franklin, leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the side. Expensive watch on his wrist, relaxed smile that said he was used to being the most important man in the room. They didn't stand when I approached. They didn't rush. They waited. Veronica looked me up and down slowly, not rude. Not obvious, just careful, like she was assessing something she might or might not want to buy. Then she extended her hand. Her grip was weak, cold. "A pleasure," she said. Franklin nodded once. "Nice to finally meet you," I smiled politely. "Likewise." Marcus gestured toward the empty chair at the far end of the table. I walked over and sat down. No one pulled out my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. No one offered me water. Little things, but little things tell big stories. Menus were placed in front of us, heavy, thick, printed in French. I opened mine slowly and stared at the page longer than necessary. "Oh my," I said quietly. "I don't recognize half of these words." Veronica leaned in just enough to be seen. "Oh, don't worry," she said with a tight smile. "It can be confusing if you're not used to it." Used to it. She gently slid my menu out of my hands without asking. "I'll order something simple for you." Simple, that word again. She turned to the waiter. "She'll have the least expensive option," she said. "Nothing heavy." The waiter nodded professionally. Marcus shifted in his seat. Simone folded her napkin carefully, eyes glued to the table. I said nothing because I wasn't there to correct anyone. I was there to observe. The conversation started light, travel stories, jet lag. How tiring long flights were. Then, like clockwork, the money talk began. "The hotel we're staying at is about 1,000 a night," Veronica said casually. "But comfort matters at our age," Franklin chuckled, "and the car rental." "Don't even ask." She looked at me, waiting. I nodded politely. "That sounds nice." She smiled, satisfied. "We did some shopping downtown," she continued. "Nothing wild, just a few thousand here and there." Again, she looked at me. I smiled. "That's lovely." She leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying herself. "And what about you, Alara?" she asked sweetly. "What do you do exactly?" "I work in an office," I replied softly. "Mostly paperwork." "Administrative things," she nodded slowly. "That's honest work," she said. "All jobs have dignity." The way she said it stripped the dignity right out. Food arrived, tiny portions arranged like artwork. Veronica cut her steak with precision. This costs $80, she said casually. But quality matters, don't you think? I'm sure it does, I replied. She took a bite and closed her eyes. Worth every penny, Franklin nodded in agreement. You get what you pay for, she turned back to me. And you live alone, right? Yes, that must be difficult, she said softly. Translation, that must be lonely. And does your income cover everything? There it was, the real question. I manage, I replied. I don't need much, she sighed dramatically. Oh, you're so brave, brave, like surviving instead of living. Marcus clenched his jaw. Simone stared hard at her plate. Veronica continued. We always made sure Simone had the best, she said proudly. Best schools, travel, experiences. She placed her hand over Simone's. When she married Marcus, of course we helped. Franklin nodded. Down payment, honeymoon. She looked straight at me. And you, were you able to help Marcus when they got married? The silence stretched. I could feel Marcus tense beside me. Not much, I said gently. I gave what I could. She smiled. That's sweet. It's the thought that counts. In that moment, everything became clear. This dinner wasn't about family, it was about hierarchy, about who mattered, about who didn't. And they thought they had already decided. I took a slow sip of water and let the silence sit, because when people underestimate you, the smartest thing you can do is let them. Dinner kept going, but something had already shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious. It was the kind of shift you feel in your chest before your mind catches up. The air felt heavier. Veronica leaned back in her chair like she was settling in for a performance, one she'd done many times before. She lifted her wine glass, holding it up to the light. This is from a private vineyard in France, she said. 200 a bottle, she took a slow sip, then smiled. Once you develop a real palate, you just can't go back. Her eyes slid toward me. Do you drink wine, Alara? Only on special occasions, I replied calmly. And usually the cheaper kind. Her smile widened. Oh, that makes sense, she said. Taste comes with travel, exposure. Franklin nodded along. We've toured vineyards all over Europe, he added. It's really more about culture than drinking. Culture, that word again. Veronica turned fully toward me. And what about hobbies, she asked. What do you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged lightly. Cooking, walking in the park. Watching TV, she paused, just a second too long, then smiled. How peaceful, not peaceful, small, that's what she meant. She exchanged a look with Franklin, the kind that didn't need words. Marcus shifted beside me. Mom makes amazing meals, he said quickly. She's really, Veronica waved her hand. Oh, I'm sure, she said. Simple pleasures have their charm, like a child's drawing on a fridge. She cut into her steak again. This costs $80, she said casually, but quality is worth it, she chewed slowly. One shouldn't just eat anything, right? I nodded. You're probably right. Marcus looked down at his plate. Simone hadn't said a word in several minutes. Veronica leaned forward slightly. So, Alara, she said gently, you live alone, correct? Yes, that must be difficult, she continued, especially at your age. There it was. The soft pity, and does your income cover everything? She asked. I could feel Marcus tense. I manage, I said. I don't need much, she sighed. Oh, you're so brave, brave, like surviving a storm instead of living a life. Franklin cleared his throat. We've always believed, he said, that stability is important, especially once children are married. Veronica nodded. Exactly, she said. When a son has a family, priorities change. She looked directly at me, and we wouldn't want Marcus feeling stretched. Translation, burdened by you. Simone's hands trembled slightly as she folded her napkin again. Marcus finally spoke. Mom doesn't, Veronica interrupted him without even looking. Marcus, darling, she said, we're just talking practically. Practically, she turned back to me. That's why we wanted to talk to you tonight. I raised my eyebrows slightly. Oh, yes, she said, folding her hands together. We've been thinking. Marcus stiffened. Maybe this isn't the time, he said quietly. Veronica raised her hand. Let the adults talk. That sentence landed hard. Adults. I was 62 years old, and in her mind, still a child, she continued. We were thinking we could help you out a little. Help. The kind that comes with conditions. A small monthly amount, she added, so you can be more comfortable. I tilted my head. And what would that help look like? She smiled, relieved that I hadn't pushed back. 500. Maybe 700 a month. $700. She leaned closer. And in return, we just ask for understanding. Understanding of what? I asked calmly. That Marcus and Simone need space, she said. To build their life without pressure. Pressure, she meant me. Franklin nodded. It's practical, he said. No emotions involved. Marcus stood up abruptly. That's enough. Veronica snapped her head toward him. Sit down, she said sharply. This is for everyone's good. Everyone's, except mine. I stayed seated, quiet, because when people think they've won, they always say too much. And of course, Veronica continued, this would help Marcus feel less worried. I looked at her. Worried about what? She hesitated. Well, no, I said softly. Tell me, she inhaled sharply. The burden, she said, there it was, out in the open. Marcus clenched his fists. Simone's eyes filled with tears. I repeated the words slowly. Burden, Veronica nodded. I don't mean it harshly, she said, just realistically. I took a sip of water, then set the glass down carefully. You've spent this entire evening talking about money, I said evenly. She frowned. And yet, I continued, you haven't asked me once if I'm happy. Silence. You didn't ask if I'm healthy, if I feel lonely. If I enjoy my life. Franklin shifted in his chair. You're taking this personally, he said. No, I replied. I'm finally seeing it clearly. Veronica crossed her arms. And what exactly do you think you see? I looked her straight in the eye. People who believe money gives them the right to measure others. Her face flushed. That's insulting. So is offering to pay me to disappear from my son's life. Marcus whispered, Mom, I raised my hand. I'm okay, then I leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something, Veronica, she sighed. What, have you ever struggled alone? She blinked. Of course I've faced challenges. Have you ever built something from nothing? I asked. Franklin jumped in. My wife manages our investments. I nodded. That's managing money that already exists. Veronica's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Neither has this dinner been, I replied calmly. The table was silent. I could feel eyes from nearby tables, people sensing tension without knowing why. I straightened in my chair. I've been quiet all night, I said, but quiet doesn't mean weak. Veronica scoffed. And what are you implying? I'm saying, I replied, that money didn't teach you class. Her face went red. Franklin pushed his chair back slightly. This dinner has gone far enough. I nodded. Yes. It has. I reached into my old canvas tote, slowly, deliberately. And in that moment, everything was about to change, because they still thought I was someone they could dismiss. They still believed I had nothing, and they were very, very wrong. I didn't rush. That's the thing people misunderstand about power. Real power never rushes. I reached into my old canvas tote slowly, not because I needed time, but because I wanted them to feel it. The pause, the uncertainty. Veronica watched me closely now. Her confidence hadn't disappeared yet, but it had shifted, tightened, like someone sensing a storm after seeing the sky change color. Franklin crossed his arms. Marcus leaned forward slightly confused. Simone's hands were clasped together in her lap, knuckles white. I pulled out my wallet, old leather, soft at the edges, worn from years of use. Veronica almost smiled, almost. That small, dismissive smile people get when they think they've already won. I set the wallet on the table but didn't open it yet. Before I respond to your offer, I said evenly, I just want to make sure I understand something. Veronica nodded, eager to regain control. Of course, you said you helped Marcus and Simone with the house, I continued. Yes, she replied proudly, 40,000. And the honeymoon, 15,000, she said without hesitation. I nodded slowly. So about $55,000 total. Franklin smiled. When you love your children, you don't hold back. I looked at him. You're right, I said, you don't. Then I turned back to Veronica. But tell me something, I said gently. What did that money buy you? Her smile faltered. Excuse me, did it buy you respect? I asked. Did it buy you love? Franklin frowned. This is unnecessary, I continued calmly. Or did it just buy compliance? Veronica straightened. You're being dramatic. No, I said, I'm being honest. Marcus swallowed hard. Mom, he whispered. I reached out and touched his hand. I'm okay, I said softly. Then I sat back and spoke clearly. Let me tell you who I am. The table went still. I started my career as a secretary, I said. Minimum wage, no benefits. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. I lived in a rented room. I raised my son alone. Veronica's lips pressed together. I worked days, studied nights, learned everything the hard way. Franklin scoffed quietly. Many people do. Yes, I agreed, but not everyone keeps going. I paused. I didn't stay a secretary. The silence stretched. I climbed, I said, assistant, manager, director. Veronica shifted in her chair. For the last 20 years, I continued, I've been a senior executive at a multinational corporation. Franklin leaned forward now. That's impressive, he said cautiously. I oversee operations across 5 countries, I went on. I manage budgets in the hundreds of millions. Simone gasped quietly. And I earn just over $40,000 a month. The world stopped. Marcus's fork slipped from his hand and clinked against the plate. Simone's mouth fell open. Veronica froze. Excuse me, she whispered. 40,000, I repeated, every month. Franklin shook his head. That's not possible. It is, I said calmly, and it has been for almost 2 decades. Marcus stared at me. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? I turned to him. Because I wanted you raised by values, not money. Simone whispered, almost to herself. Then why live so simply? I smiled softly. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Veronica's voice trembled. You expect us to believe this after how you presented yourself? Yes, I said, because how I live is a choice. Franklin leaned back. Then why pretend tonight? I met his eyes. Because I wanted to see how you treat someone you think has nothing. Veronica's face went pale, and now I know, she stood abruptly. This is manipulation. No, I replied. This was observation. I opened my wallet, pulled out a black card, placed it gently on the table. My corporate card, I said, no preset limit. Veronica stared at it. Her hands shook slightly. You offered me $700 a month, I continued. Let me make you an offer. Silence. I'll give you $1 million, I said evenly, if you can name one person you treated kindly tonight before you knew who I was. Veronica opened her mouth. Closed it. Franklin looked away. Simone began to cry quietly. Marcus squeezed my hand. I nodded. That's what I thought. Veronica snapped. You deceived us. Yes, I said, and you revealed yourselves. Franklin stood. This dinner is over, I nodded. It was over long before now. The waiter approached carefully. Would you like the check? I'll take it, I said. Veronica hissed. I don't need your money. I know, I replied calmly. But I didn't need your pity either. I slid the card closer to her. Consider tonight educational. She couldn't look at me anymore. Not now, not after everything. For a few seconds after I placed the card on the table, nobody spoke. Not a single word. It wasn't awkward silence. It was the kind of silence that hits after something breaks. Like glass shattering in a room where everyone pretended it wasn't fragile. Veronica stared at the card, not at me, at the card, as if it were the thing that had betrayed her. Franklin's confident posture had changed. His shoulders were tighter now, his jaw clenched just enough to show strain. The man who had leaned back so comfortably earlier now sat forward, alert, calculating. Marcus looked like the ground had shifted under his feet. He kept glancing between me and Simone, like his brain was trying to catch up to reality. Simone hadn't moved at all. Her eyes were wide, glassy, fixed on the table like she was afraid to look at anyone. I stayed still. Hands folded calmly in my lap, because once truth enters the room, you don't need to push it. It does the work for you. Veronica was the first to speak. Her laugh came out sharp, unnatural, almost brittle. This is ridiculous, she said. She picked up the card between two fingers as if touching it too long might stain her. You expect us to believe this? She asked, waving it slightly. That you make $40,000 a month. Her tone was mocking, but her eyes betrayed her. She wasn't mocking, she was scared. Franklin cleared his throat. This feels inappropriate, he said. Very inappropriate. I met his gaze calmly. Does it? I asked. He frowned. Yes, this whole situation feels staged. Staged. I nodded slowly. It probably does, I said, because when people realize they misjudge someone, the first instinct is to deny. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, he said quietly, is this true? I turned to him. Yes, one word, no explanation, no defense, just truth. His mouth opened, then closed again. Simone whispered, barely audible, you never said. I didn't need to, I replied gently. Veronica pushed her chair back slightly. I don't appreciate being made a fool of, she snapped. I tilted my head. I didn't make you anything, I said. I simply arrived as myself. Her eyes flashed. You came here pretending to be poor. Yes, I said evenly. And you treated me accordingly. Franklin interjected quickly. We treated you with respect. I smiled faintly. Respect, I repeated. He hesitated. You ordered for me without asking, I continued calmly. You spoke about my life as if I weren't sitting here. You offered me money to disappear from my son's life. Veronica shot back. That was out of concern. No, I said. That was control. The word landed hard. Marcus's hands clenched into fists under the table. Simone's shoulders began to shake. Franklin leaned forward. You're twisting intentions. I shook my head slowly. I didn't twist anything, I said. I listened. The waiter approached cautiously, sensing tension. Is everything all right? He asked. Franklin forced a smile. Yes, fine. The waiter nodded and backed away. Veronica looked around, suddenly aware of the room, of the other diners. Of the eyes, she lowered her voice. This discussion is inappropriate for a public place. I nodded. It was inappropriate from the moment you decided to discuss my value. Her lips pressed together. Marcus stood halfway up from his chair. Mom, he said, voice tight, why didn't you tell me? I reached for his hand. Because I wanted you to grow without depending on me, I said softly. I wanted you to build your own life. His eyes filled. I thought you struggled, he whispered. I struggled, I replied, just not the way you imagined. Veronica scoffed. So you let your own son believe you were barely getting by? Yes, I said calmly. And he grew up kind, responsible, and independent. Franklin shook his head. This is unbelievable. Truth often is, I replied. Veronica leaned forward suddenly. And what was the point? She demanded. To humiliate us? No, I said. To understand you. She laughed again, sharper this time. Well, congratulations, she said. You've made your point. I looked at her steadily. No, I said. You made mine. Simone finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. Mom, she said. Why did you talk to her like that? Veronica froze. Like what? Like she was less than you, Simone whispered. Franklin snapped. Simone, don't start. She looked at him. No, she said. You don't get to tell me not to start. Her voice cracked. I saw it, she continued. Every comment, every look. Veronica's face hardened. We were being practical. Simone shook her head. You were being cruel, the word hung in the air. Marcus stared at his wife. I felt it too, he said quietly. Mom was being judged the entire night. Veronica stood abruptly. This is turning into a circus, I nodded. Yes, I said softly, and the masks are falling. Franklin grabbed his napkin. We're done here, he motioned to the waiter. Bring the check. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Veronica looked at me one last time. You may have money, she said coldly, but you have no class. I smiled gently. Class, I replied, is how you treat people when you think they have nothing. She turned away. Simone broke down completely. Tears streaming, hands covering her face. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't stop them. I stood up slowly, walked to her side, placed a hand on her shoulder. I know, I said quietly, but now you see, Marcus stood beside me. I'm sorry too, he said. I squeezed his hand. This isn't about apologies, I replied. It's about choices. The waiter returned with the check. He placed it carefully in the center of the table. Franklin reached for his wallet confidently. Too confidently, and that's when things were about to get much worse. Franklin reached for his wallet like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Smooth, confident, automatic, the kind of motion that said, I've never worried about this part. He pulled out a gold card and placed it on the small black folder without even glancing at the total. There, he said curtly, let's get this over with. The waiter nodded respectfully and took the folder. As soon as he walked away, Franklin leaned back in his chair. Veronica exhaled sharply. This has been exhausting, she muttered. Marcus looked at the table. Simone stared at her hands. I stayed quiet because I knew something they didn't. Not about the card, about pride. Pride never prepares for failure. A few minutes passed, longer than normal. The waiter hadn't returned yet. Franklin checked his watch. Impatient, Veronica tapped her fingers lightly against the table. This place always takes forever, she said. They like to make it feel exclusive. I nodded faintly, of course. Another minute passed, then the waiter returned. His posture was different, less relaxed, more careful. I'm sorry, sir, he said quietly, but your card was declined. The words hit the table like a dropped glass. Franklin blinked. What? Declined, the waiter repeated, lowering his voice. That's impossible, Franklin snapped. There must be a mistake. It does happen sometimes, the waiter said politely. Would you like to try another card? Franklin's face flushed red. He reached back into his wallet and pulled out a second card, this one darker, more expensive. Try this, he said sharply. The waiter nodded and disappeared again. Veronica leaned toward Franklin, whispering urgently, What's going on? It's probably a travel hold, he muttered. Relax. Simone looked up, eyes wide. Dad, it's nothing, Franklin said quickly. Marcus glanced at me. I said nothing. The room felt smaller now. Nearby diners glanced over subtly, not staring but noticing. The waiter returned again, even more cautious this time. I'm very sorry, sir, he said. This one was declined as well. Franklin stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous, he snapped. I'm calling the bank. He grabbed his phone and walked toward the entrance. Veronica sat frozen. This has never happened, she whispered. Never. I took a slow sip of water. Unfortunate timing, I said softly. She shot me a look. Franklin paced near the door, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care about security checks, he hissed. I need this fixed now, Marcus leaned toward Simone. This isn't your fault, he whispered. She shook her head, tears streaming. I knew they were like this, she said. I just didn't think it would come to this. Veronica clenched her jaw. This is humiliating, she muttered. I looked at her. No, I said calmly, this is revealing. She snapped her head toward me. You planned this. No, I replied, you just never imagined it. Franklin returned to the table, face pale. There's a temporary freeze, he said stiffly. Security issue. He avoided eye contact. It'll be fixed tomorrow. The waiter hovered nearby. Would you like another form of payment? He asked gently. Marcus started to reach for his wallet. I raised my hand. No, everyone looked at me. I reached into my canvas tote slowly, deliberately. I pulled out my wallet again, then another card, not black, metal, heavy. The edges caught the light. The waiter's eyes widened slightly. Veronica's breath caught. That's a centurion, she whispered. I slid it across the table. Please, I said to the waiter. He took it with both hands. When he returned, it took less than 2 minutes. Everything is taken care of, Miss Sterling, he said respectfully. Would you like a receipt? No, I replied. Thank you. Veronica stared at the empty space where the card had been. Franklin swallowed hard. You paid, he asked quietly. Yes, I said, for all of it. He nodded once. Thank you, he muttered. You're welcome, I replied. That's what family does right. Helps when someone comes up short. Veronica's face burned red. She stood abruptly. We're leaving. Simone didn't move. Marcus didn't either. Veronica snapped. Simone now. Simone shook her head. I can't, she whispered. Not like this, Franklin grabbed his jacket. This night is over. I stood calmly. Yes, I said, it is. Veronica looked at me one last time. This isn't finished. I met her gaze. It was finished the moment you decided who I was. She turned away. And for the first time that night, she had no control. For a moment after I paid the bill, nobody moved. It was as if the restaurant itself had frozen. The soft music still played. Forks still clinked at other tables. People still laughed quietly nearby. But at our table, time had stopped. Veronica stood there, stiff, her purse clutched tightly under her arm like a shield. Franklin hovered beside her, jaw clenched, eyes darting around the room, painfully aware now of how many people might have noticed what just happened. Simone stayed seated. That alone was a statement. Simone, Veronica said sharply, we're leaving. Her voice wasn't a request, it was a command. Simone didn't look up right away. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers intertwined so tightly her knuckles were white. Her shoulders trembled as she took a shaky breath. I can't, she whispered. Veronica froze. What did you say? She asked. I said I can't, Simone repeated, louder this time. Not like this. Franklin turned toward her. Simone, he warned, this is not the place. She finally looked up. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from crying. But there was something new there. Resolve. No, she said softly. This is exactly the place. Marcus stood beside her. I agree, he said quietly. This ends now. Veronica stared at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. You are embarrassing us, she snapped. Simone shook her head. No, she replied. You embarrassed yourselves. The words landed hard. Franklin stepped forward. Watch your tone, he said sharply. Marcus moved closer to Simone. Don't talk to her like that, he said. Veronica laughed bitterly. Oh, now you're defending her, she scoffed. After everything we've done for you, Marcus inhaled slowly. That's the problem, he said. You think love is something you buy. Franklin's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, Marcus didn't back down. You keep bringing up money, he continued. The house, the honeymoon, the help, he gestured around the table. You use it like leverage, Veronica's face flushed. We sacrificed everything for Simone. Simone stood up. No, she said. You didn't sacrifice, you controlled. Veronica gasped. How dare you? Simone's voice cracked, but she didn't stop. You made me feel like I owed you my life, she said, like I had to earn your approval every day. Franklin snapped. That's called gratitude. No, Simone replied. That's fear. Silence fell again. Marcus turned to me briefly, eyes full, then he faced her parents. You talked about my mother like she was a burden, he said quietly. Veronica waved her hand dismissively. That's not what we meant. It's exactly what you meant, Marcus replied. He swallowed hard. You didn't ask if she was happy. You didn't ask who she was. You just decided what she was worth. Veronica crossed her arms. We were protecting our daughter. Marcus shook his head. You were protecting your image. Franklin slammed his hand lightly on the table. That's enough. Marcus didn't flinch. No, he said. This is enough. People at nearby tables were definitely watching now. Veronica glanced around nervously. Lower your voice, she hissed. Simone laughed weakly through her tears. Why? She asked. So you can pretend this didn't happen. Veronica turned on her. After everything we've done for you, Simone interrupted her. You did things for me so I would belong to you, she said. Not because you trusted me. Franklin's voice rose. We gave you everything? Simone nodded. Yes, she said, but you never gave me freedom. Marcus placed a hand on her back. I won't let you talk to my wife like that, he said firmly. Veronica stared at him. So this is your choice, she demanded. You choose her over us, Marcus answered without hesitation. I choose respect, Franklin laughed harshly. You'll regret this, Marcus met his gaze. Maybe, he said, but I'd regret staying silent more. Veronica's voice trembled. You have no idea what you're throwing away. Simone wiped her tears. I do, she said. I'm throwing away fear. The room felt electric. Veronica's shoulders sagged slightly. This is how you repay us, she asked quietly. Simone took a deep breath. I'm not repaying anything, she said. I'm choosing how I want to live. Franklin shook his head. This family is falling apart. I finally spoke. No, I said calmly. It's finally being honest. Everyone looked at me. Simone turned toward me, eyes full. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have stopped them sooner. I nodded gently. I know, I said, but you're stopping it now. Marcus exhaled deeply. We're leaving, he said, together. Veronica's eyes widened. You're coming with us, she said to Simone. Simone shook her head. No, she said softly. I'm going with my husband. Franklin stared at her. This is a mistake, Simone replied quietly. Living afraid was the mistake. Veronica turned away sharply. Fine, she snapped. Do what you want. She grabbed Franklin's arm. We're done here. They walked toward the exit without looking back. No hugs, no apologies. Just wounded pride and shattered control. Marcus and Simone stood there, shaking. Marcus looked at me. I'm so sorry, he said again. I took his hands. This isn't your fault, I said. This was necessary. Simone leaned into Marcus, crying quietly. I don't know what happens now, she whispered. Marcus kissed her forehead. We figure it out, he said, together. I picked up my old canvas tote. Looked around the table one last time. What was broken wasn't family, it was illusion. And sometimes that's the only way real healing can begin. The doors of the restaurant closed behind Veronica and Franklin with a soft, final sound. Not a slam, not a dramatic exit, just a quiet close. The kind that feels heavier than yelling ever could. For a moment, none of us moved. Marcus stood beside Simone, one arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. She leaned into him like she was holding herself together by force of will alone. Her parents were gone, not physically far, but something else had broken. Something that doesn't snap loudly, something that fractures silently. I watched the space where they had been sitting, the empty chairs, the untouched glasses. The night suddenly felt colder. Marcus exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. I didn't know it would go like that, he said quietly. No one ever does, I replied. Simone wiped her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed by her tears. I feel like I just lost my family, she whispered. Marcus tightened his hold. You didn't lose them, he said. You just stopped letting them control you. She nodded, but the pain was still there. Grief doesn't disappear just because you did the right thing. I picked up my old canvas tote and slipped it over my shoulder. Let's go, I said gently. Marcus nodded. As we walked toward the exit, I felt eyes on us. Not judgment, recognition. People had seen something real tonight. They might not know what, but they felt it. Outside, the night air hit my face, cool, clean, grounding. Marcus stepped ahead to open the door for Simone, like he always did, small gestures, the kind that matter. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the city glowing around us, cars passing, people laughing somewhere down the street. Life continuing, Simone finally spoke. I'm scared, she admitted. Marcus kissed the top of her head. I know. What if they never forgive me? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, then that's something they'll have to live with. She nodded slowly. I watched them and felt something unexpected. Pride, not because they chose me, but because they chose themselves. Marcus turned to me. Mom, he said, are you okay? I smiled softly. I am, I replied. I've been okay all night. He searched my face. You were really calm, he said. I don't think I've ever seen you like that. I shrugged. When you've made peace with who you are, I said, other people's opinions stop shaking you. Simone looked at me. I'm sorry, she said again, for all of it. I shook my head gently. You don't need to apologize anymore, I said. Now you just need to decide who you want to be. She nodded. I want to be better. That's enough, I said. That's more than enough. A rideshare pulled up. Marcus opened the door for me. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We have a lot to talk about, I smiled. Take your time, I said. Tonight was heavy. Before I got in, I paused. Marcus, I said. He looked at me. Set boundaries now, I said quietly. Or you'll be setting them forever. He nodded, understanding fully. I will. I got into the car. As it pulled away, I looked back once. Marcus had his arm around Simone. They stood close together, not perfect, but united. The ride home was silent, not empty, just full of thoughts, full of clarity. When I got home, I didn't turn on any lights at first. I stood in the doorway, listening to the quiet of my apartment, the familiar quiet. The kind that doesn't judge you. I slipped off my shoes, set my tote down, sat on the couch. And for the first time that night, I let myself feel tired, not defeated, not sad, just human. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. We're home, thank you for tonight, I love you. I smiled, typed back. I love you too, always. I set the phone down and leaned back. What happened tonight wasn't about money, it was about truth, and truth has consequences. It changes relationships, it redraws lines, it forces people to choose. Veronica and Franklin chose pride, Marcus and Simone chose honesty, and I chose peace. I stood up, made myself tea, and looked around my simple living room. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, just real, and that was enough. Because at the end of the day, wealth isn't what you show, it's what you don't need to prove. I woke up before the alarm, I always do. Some habits stay with you no matter how far you climb. The room was quiet, washed in early morning light. The city outside hadn't fully woken yet. No horns, no rush. Just that soft stillness that only exists for a few minutes before the world starts demanding things from you again. I sat up slowly. No headache, no regret, no knot in my chest. That's how I knew I'd done the right thing. When you make the wrong decision, your body tells you before your mind does. You wake up heavy, restless, arguing with yourself before your feet even hit the floor. But this morning I felt clear, calm, grounded. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. The apartment looked the same as it always did. Modest, familiar, real, no marble floors, no designer furniture. No signs of wealth, and yet I felt richer than I had in years. I made my way to the kitchen and put water on for coffee. The old kettle whistled softly, just like it had for over a decade. I poured myself a mug of strong black coffee and stood by the window, watching the city stretch awake. People walking dogs, a man jogging slowly, headphones in, a woman unlocking a corner shop. Life didn't care about what happened in a fancy restaurant last night, and that was comforting because it reminded me of something important. No matter how dramatic a moment feels, the world keeps going. Your peace has to come from inside. I took a sip of coffee and let my thoughts drift back to the night before, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with understanding. Veronica's face when the card declined, Franklin's rigid posture. Marcus standing up for the first time not just as a son, but as a man. Simone finally finding her voice. None of it felt victorious. It felt necessary. I sat down at the small kitchen table and breathed deeply. People think power is loud. They think it's speeches, confrontations, dominance. But real power is being able to walk away without shaking. And last night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding anymore. I checked my phone, 3 messages, one from my assistant reminding me of a Monday briefing, one from a colleague congratulating me on closing a deal the week before, and one from Marcus. Did you sleep okay? I smiled. I typed back like a baby. His reply came quickly. Good, Simone's still asleep. She cried herself out. I stared at that message for a moment, then I replied, that's normal. Truth can hurt before it heals. There was a pause before his next message. Mom, thank you for everything. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't know what to say, but because some things don't need to be rushed. I finished my coffee, washed the mug, and changed into comfortable clothes. Old jeans, soft sweater, nothing impressive, exactly how I like it. I stepped outside and took a short walk around the neighborhood. The air was crisp, clean, honest. An older man nodded at me as he passed by. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied. No titles, no assumptions, just two people existing. That's the kind of interaction money can't buy. When I got back home, I sat on the couch and let myself think about the bigger picture. I had spent years making myself smaller in my personal life, not because I was ashamed, but because I believed humility meant silence. Last night taught me something different. Humility doesn't mean allowing yourself to be disrespected. It means knowing who you are without needing to announce it, and also knowing when silence becomes permission. I thought about Marcus growing up. How careful I had been not to let my career define our relationship. How I never talked about bonuses or promotions. How I let him believe I lived paycheck to paycheck so he'd learn resilience. Some people would call that deception. But parenting isn't about full disclosure, it's about preparation. Marcus learned to stand on his own. And last night I saw the result of that. He didn't freeze, he didn't hide, he chose integrity over comfort. That told me everything I needed to know. My phone buzzed again, another message from Marcus. When you're ready, we'd like to talk. No pressure, I replied. Later today is fine. I set the phone down and leaned back. For the first time in years, I felt like I didn't have to manage perceptions anymore. I didn't have to be careful. I didn't have to downplay. I didn't have to explain. The truth was out, and it hadn't destroyed anything worth keeping. It had only stripped away what was already fragile. I stood up and opened the window wider, letting fresh air fill the room. This was peace, not the absence of conflict, but the absence of fear. And as the morning sun climbed higher, I knew one thing for certain. The hardest part was over. What came next would be quieter, slower, but far more meaningful. Marcus and Simone came over that afternoon, not together at first. Marcus arrived early alone. I heard the knock and knew it was him before I opened the door. The rhythm was familiar, careful, respectful. The way he'd knocked since he was a teenager, never assuming he could just walk in, even though this had always been his home in every way that mattered. I opened the door. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally. The kind of tired that comes after your worldview cracks and you're standing in the rubble, trying to decide what to keep. Hey, Mom, he said softly. Come in, I replied. He stepped inside and glanced around like he was seeing the place differently now. The same small living room, the same old couch, the same quiet dignity. He sat down slowly, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. I didn't sleep much, he admitted. I nodded. I didn't expect you to. He let out a short, humorless laugh. I keep replaying everything, every word, every look. That's normal, I said. It means you're processing. He rubbed his face. I always thought I understood my in-laws, he said, but last night it was like seeing them without a filter. I waited. He continued. I think what shocked me most wasn't what they said to you, he said carefully. It was how normal it felt to them. That's a sharp realization. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong, he went on. That's what scares me. I leaned back. People who confuse control with love rarely see the damage they cause, I said. Marcus nodded slowly. I keep thinking if you hadn't been there, if it had just been Simone and me, this would have gone on for years. Yes, I replied, and that's why it happened when it did. He looked at me, eyes heavy. I should have protected you. I shook my head gently. You did, I said. Last night, he swallowed hard. That was the first time I ever stood up to them, he admitted. My hands were shaking. They usually are, I said. Courage doesn't feel strong in the moment. It feels terrifying. He exhaled deeply. Simone's coming later, he said. She needed some time. That's okay, I replied. She's grieving too, he frowned. Grieving? Yes, I said. The parents she thought she had, the family dynamic she believed was normal. He nodded, understanding now. She told me something this morning, he said quietly. She said she feels like she's betraying them. I met his eyes. Breaking a cycle always feels like betrayal to the people who benefit from it, I said. That landed. He sat back, absorbing it. Mom, he said after a moment, I need to tell you something. I waited. I've decided something, he said. We both have. Before I could respond, there was another knock. Simone had arrived. She stood in the doorway looking smaller somehow, not weak, just exposed. No makeup, hair pulled back, simple clothes. She looked like someone who wasn't hiding anymore. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," I replied warmly. "Come in." She stepped inside and paused like she didn't know where to sit. Marcus stood and took her hand. They sat together, close. A united front. Simone took a deep breath. "I've never talked to my parents the way I did last night," she said. "My whole body feels like it's still bracing for impact." I nodded. "That's what happens when you stop obeying fear," I said. "It doesn't leave quietly." She looked down. "They've already texted me," she admitted. "Long messages, angry ones." Marcus squeezed her hand. "They told me I'm ungrateful," she continued. "That I've changed, that I'm being influenced." She looked at me then. "I am changing," she said, "but not because of you, because I finally listened to myself." "That's growth," I replied. She swallowed. "They said if we keep this up, they'll pull all financial support." Marcus's jaw tightened. I stayed calm. "And how do you feel about that?" I asked. Simone hesitated. Then she straightened. "Relieved," she said quietly. "And ashamed that I feel relieved." I smiled gently. "That's freedom mixed with guilt," I said. "It happens when strings get cut." Marcus nodded. "We talked all night," he said, "and we decided something." I waited. "We're not accepting their money anymore," he said firmly. "No help, no gifts, no leverage," Simone continued. "And we're setting boundaries, real ones." She took a breath. "No comments about your lifestyle," she said to me. "No comparisons, no help that comes with expectations." I nodded. "And if they don't respect that?" I asked. Marcus answered without hesitation. Then we stepped back. Simone's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't break. "Even if it means distance," she said. I leaned forward. "Let me say something very clearly," I said. "You are not wrong for choosing peace over approval." Simone nodded, crying silently. "I don't want to raise children who think love has a price," she said. "I don't want them growing up afraid to disappoint us." Marcus kissed her temple. "We want something different," I smiled. "You already are different," I said. There was a quiet moment, then Marcus looked at me. "Mom," he said, "I want you to know I'm proud of you." I felt that in my chest. "I always was," he continued. "I just didn't know how much." I reached out and took his hand. "That means more to me than anything," I said. Simone wiped her eyes. "I hope someday they'll understand," she said. "Maybe," I replied, "and maybe not." She looked at me, surprised. "Change isn't guaranteed," I continued. "But integrity is." The room felt lighter, not happy, but honest. And honesty has a way of lifting weight you didn't realize you were carrying. Marcus stood. "We should go," he said. "We have some hard conversations ahead." Simone nodded. Before leaving, she turned to me. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for showing me another way to be strong." I smiled. "You found it yourself," I said. "I just held up the mirror." They left together, hand in hand. And as the door closed behind them, I felt something settle deep inside me. This was how cycles end, not with explosions, but with choices, quiet ones, brave ones, that change everything. Veronica called 3 days later, not Marcus, not Simone, me. I stared at the phone when her name appeared on the screen. I didn't feel angry, I didn't feel nervous, I felt curious. "That's how I knew I was ready," I answered calmly. "Hello, Veronica." There was a pause, then her voice, carefully controlled. "Ara," she said, "we need to talk." "We can talk," I replied, "but only if it's respectful." Another pause. "Yes," she said stiffly. "That's fine." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near my apartment. Not fancy, not cheap, neutral ground. When I arrived, she was already there. No jewelry this time, no designer bag, just a plain coat and tired eyes. Franklin wasn't with her. That told me everything. She stood when she saw me. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded and sat down. A waitress approached. We ordered coffee. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, just honest. Veronica finally spoke. "I didn't sleep much after that night," she admitted. "Neither did I replied. She looked down at her hands. "I've never been spoken to the way you spoke to me." I met her gaze. "I spoke to you the way you spoke to me," I said calmly. "The difference is I didn't hide it." Her jaw tightened. "You humiliated us," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "You felt humiliated." She flinched. "There's a difference," she sighed heavily. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I know," I replied. "You meant to manage me." That landed. She looked away. "I grew up believing money was safety," she said quietly. "That without it you were nothing." "I know," I said. She looked back at me surprised. "How?" "Because I grew up without it too," I replied. "The difference is I didn't let it decide my worth." Her eyes softened for the first time. Frank honesty cracked through her armor. "I didn't recognize myself that night," she admitted. "Or maybe I did, and that's what scares me." I sipped my coffee. "Awareness is uncomfortable," I said, "but it's necessary." She nodded slowly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I don't think I've earned that." "That's honest," I replied. She took a breath. "I'm asking for clarity," she said. "What happens now?" I leaned back. "Now," I said, "you decide whether you want a relationship or control." Her eyes filled slightly. "And if I can't change overnight?" "I'm not asking for overnight," I said. "I'm asking for effort." She nodded. "And Marcus?" she asked carefully. "That's between you and him," I replied. "But it starts with respect." She hesitated. "I'm afraid of losing my daughter." I met her eyes gently. "You already started losing her the moment love became conditional." Tears welled. "I don't know how to fix that." Start by listening, I said, without defending yourself. She nodded. The waitress brought our coffee. We sat quietly for a moment, then Veronica spoke again. Franklin isn't ready, she admitted. He thinks this whole thing was an attack. That's his choice, I replied. Growth can't be forced, she sighed. I don't want to repeat this cycle, she said. My mother was the same way. That surprised me. She controlled everything, Veronica continued. With guilt, with fear, I nodded. Cycles repeat until someone is brave enough to stop them. She looked at me. Is that what you did? Yes, I replied simply. Silence settled again, not heavy, not tense, just real. Finally, Veronica stood. I don't know what I'll become, she said, but I know I don't want to be that woman again. That's a start, I said. She hesitated. Will you tell Marcus that I'm trying? I considered it. Yes, I said. But only actions will matter. She nodded, accepting that fully. As she turned to leave, she paused. You were right, she said quietly. Money didn't make me strong. She looked back one last time. But you are. I didn't respond. I didn't need to because strength doesn't need acknowledgement. I watched her walk away, not defeated, not victorious, just human. And for the first time, I felt no resentment toward her, only clarity. The kind that lets you move forward without carrying other people's baggage. That evening, after meeting Veronica, I walked home slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to feel every step. The sidewalks were warm from the afternoon sun. A couple walked past me laughing, their hands brushing naturally like they'd done it 1,000 times before. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve, asking for ice cream. A man sat on a bench scrolling through his phone, lost in his own world. Ordinary moments, and suddenly they felt extraordinary, because I realized something important. None of these people knew what had happened in a luxury restaurant a few nights earlier. None of them cared who paid the bill, whose card was declined, or who had the bigger bank account. They were living, and that's when it hit me. We spend so much time proving things that don't actually matter. I reached my apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The familiar quiet welcomed me like an old friend. I turned on a lamp, not because it was dark, but because I liked the soft glow. I sat down on the couch and let the silence hold me. No drama, no tension, just peace. I thought about Marcus, about the little boy who used to wait by the window when I worked late. The teenager who learned early that nothing came easy. The man who stood up to his in-laws not with shouting, but with dignity. That night at the restaurant didn't change who he was. It revealed who he had become. And that mattered more to me than any title or paycheck I had ever earned. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. We talked more today. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. I smiled. Honest conversations are never easy. But they are always worth it. A second message came in. Simone wanted me to tell you she feels lighter, scared but lighter. I typed back slowly. That's what freedom feels like at first. I set the phone down and leaned back, letting the weight of the past few days settle into something softer. For years, I thought keeping my life small was protecting others. But now I understood something deeper. Hiding isn't humility, silence isn't always grace, and peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from choosing truth and accepting whatever follows. A few days later, Marcus and Simone came by again. This time they didn't look heavy. They looked aligned. They sat across from me at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around mugs of coffee. We've decided something, Marcus said. I waited. We're moving forward without their money, Simone added. No safety net, no strings, I nodded. And more importantly, Marcus continued, we're building our life on our own terms. Simone smiled faintly. It's scary, she admitted, but it feels right. I looked at them both. You're doing something powerful, I said. You're choosing values over comfort. Marcus exhaled. I think that's what real adulthood is. I smiled. It is. Before they left, Simone hesitated. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. She looked down, then back up. How did you know that money wouldn't make you hard or bitter? I thought about that for a moment. I didn't always know, I said honestly. But I learned this early. Money magnifies who you already are. She nodded slowly. If you're insecure, it makes you louder. If you're afraid, it makes you controlling. If you're empty, it makes you greedy. Marcus listened closely. But if you're grounded, I continued, it gives you freedom. Simone smiled softly. I want that kind of freedom. You're already on your way, I said. After they left, I stood by the window again, watching the sky change colors as evening arrived. I thought about the future, not in terms of money, but in terms of legacy. What do we really leave behind? It's not houses. It's not accounts, it's not status, it's how people feel after knowing us. Veronica and Franklin would always have wealth, but they were learning, slowly and painfully, that wealth alone doesn't build connection. Marcus and Simone were learning something different, that love without conditions is stronger than any inheritance. And me, I had learned that protecting your peace is the greatest luxury of all. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to in-laws, not to society, not even to myself, because I finally understood who I was without shrinking, without hiding, without apology. That night at the restaurant wasn't about humiliation, it was about clarity. It stripped away illusion, and what remained was truth. Truth about money, truth about power, truth about family. And if there's one thing I hope you take from this story, it's this: you don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to be rich to be valuable. You don't have to impress anyone to be worthy. The most powerful people in the room are often the quiet ones, the ones who know exactly who they are. And if you ever find yourself being judged, underestimated, or dismissed, let them. Because the moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you become free. Speech balloon final WRDS CTA, very important for YUTB. If this story touched you in any way, if it reminded you of someone in your own life, or if you've ever been judged for living simply, I'd love to hear from you. Backhand index pointing right, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what part of this story stayed with you the most? Your support, whether it's a comment, a like, or a super thanks, helps me keep sharing stories that matter. There are many more waiting for you here, so if you haven't already, subscribe, take a deep breath, and I'll see you in the next story with love and respect.